Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 7th of September, 2022. Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. African Americans make up just 5% of participants in clinical trials. And as we observe National Bone Marrow Awareness Month, one organization called Idhini is doing its part to build trust in clinical trials and make it easier for Black Americans and other minorities to participate. We speak with Gerard Charlot of Idhini. But first, a couple of headlines to start your Wednesday. Rowe, Michael Jackson's ex-wife and mother of two of his children, worked for a Beverly Hills dermatologist for decades. And for the first time, she revealed a shocking story of how Dr. Arnie Klein traded drugs for entry into the celebrity lifestyle. Rowe had never done an interview before and has remained steadfast that she would not talk about the king of pop. But she appeared on a television special last night titled Who Really Killed Michael Jackson? The documentary shows Dr. Klein plying Michael with massive doses of Demerol on an almost daily basis in the months leading up to his death. Debbie Rose says powerful people would call Klein, invite him to a party, and ask for drugs as party favors. Rose says on party night, there'd be 90 Percocet pills or other drugs in a candy dish. She says he regularly traded drugs for access. The documentary featured a lead detective who also claimed that it was unfair to place all the blame on Dr. Conrad Murray, who was convicted of involuntary manslaughter after Michael's death in 2009. Michael Jackson would have been 64 years old last month had he lived. Also this morning, Jackson, Mississippi residents now have steady flowing water, but there are restrictions on how it can be used because the water is still contaminated. Reports said that Jackson dwellers are still subject to the same boil water notice that has been in effect for more than a month. They advise not to drink, brush their teeth, make ice, cook, or wash dishes with tap water unless it has been boiled for at least 1 minute. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves and Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba both stated that the boil water alert will likely be lifted in the next few days, despite state and local officials' reluctance to give a specific time frame. The 120 sample locations dispersed throughout the city must produce 2 straight days of clear test results for the boil water advisory to be lifted. Due to the low water pressure, testing was put on hold 2 weeks ago when Jackson experienced severe rain. Bathing, showering, washing hands, and doing laundry are all possible and fine to do in Jackson now that water pressure is strong enough throughout the city, officials said. All of those activities are reportedly risk-free as long as no tap water is ingested. So they still have to deal with that in Mississippi. We'll keep an eye on that as that develops. Now, clinical trials in Black minorities and what one organization is doing to help. We speak with Gerard Charlot of Idhini. How are you?
How are you?
You know, you got a tough, your organization's name is tough, your name is tough. It's just a tough day,
It's
man.
not tough. I'm Haitian, so the reality is
Okay,
it's just French. So the way you say Merlot is Charlot. It's the same thing.
Charlot.
And
Okay.
Idhini is essentially is Swahili. So it's something that clearly we don't use that in this language in this country, but it is one of our native languages. So the main point about it is why we chose Idhini is Idhini number one means consent in Swahili or approval, which is essentially the backbone on anything that you want to do in healthcare. So
Right.
we felt that it was really important that for it to truly be our own and to be focused on the BIPOC community, that we should have something that actually reflects it.
Yeah. And so clinical trials, let's dive in, and all that you said is really a really smooth runway to where we want to fly to today, and that is these clinical trials. It's we know the participation, the last stats from the FDA says only 5% of Black people participate. You guys, though, well, before we get into what exactly you're doing to change that, to help change that, talk about a little bit why particularly Black people and other minorities, but particularly Black people hesitant or either hesitant or don't participate.
There's a couple of reasons. The main reason, of course, is trust. And it's not just Black people, it's the BIPOC community, meaning you're Black and brown and indigenous people of color in this country. So when you said, you're absolutely right, it's 5% of Black people, but it's actually 1% of Latinos, and indigenous people are even less, like 0.5, right?
Right.
0.05, right? So when you put the whole diaspora and diasporas together, specifically when you're talking about Latino community, Latino community is bigger than the African American community. So in fact, it's the fastest rising community in this country. And when you look at that number, there's a reason, because they don't trust.
Right.
They don't trust, and they have very good reasons not to, by the way. You know what I mean? You have Henrietta Lacks, which essentially is the entire biotech industry, which her family hasn't been well compensated for that or any of the sort. You're talking about pretty much a almost a $1.2 trillion industry.
Right.
You know what I mean? You also have things where consent was not captured. In this, where people, like, for instance, the Tuskegee experiment, 40 years from 1930 to 1970, and the study was pretty much, how do you die from syphilis? Now, that's fine, but the reality is, if you told me, maybe at that time, the 30s, what was going pre-World War II, a lot of things would happen in this country. If you told me I'm going to die, at least let me, give me money to pay for a life insurance policy.
Yeah. And Gerard, we saw a lot of it continues, right? During the COVID, when they first rolled out the vaccines, we were the ones who was saying, wait a minute, let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Right.
And so are we over? But people will argue that, okay, Tuskegee happened, Henrietta Lacks happened. Though that's some time ago. That's in the past.
That's what happens. I mean, there are countless other more recent things, but those are the big ones because they had the most impact, and they were the ones that most people are aware of.
Yeah. And the importance of these clinics. Now we're talking about participating, because even with the again, the COVID vaccine, I know we had the president of Meharry Medical College on, who was also on that FDA board, who approved the vaccines. Black man, and why am his name? I'm drawing a blank on president of Meharry Medical College's name, but Dr. Hildreth. And he said, look, I'm not going to approve a vaccine, and he had the power. I'm not going to approve a vaccine that is not good for my people.
Exactly.
And so having people on those in that position that look like us, that represent us, is important, but also having people in those trials that look like us is important, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point. You're talking about the president of Meharry. They're working on Black people all day. They understand the different nuance, the genomics. They understand some of the social determinants of health that go around that. You know what I mean? They understand people. And they understand their people. And when it's no different than an Asian doctor going, understanding the culture and the background of Asian people. So what we're saying is not that these they're not to be trusted, but the manner. Think about it. At the end of the day, the easiest way for me to figure out what you want to do is if I just ask you.
Right.
And when you're doing helicopter research, coming into the community, we all know you cannot work for the community if you don't work in the community. So the reality is you not being able to go in and build with folks and actually have a relationship. And when I tell people, well, what does a relationship look like? I'm like, when you do an event, you break down boxes. You know what I mean? You carry a box in, you do some stuff, and you do what we do.
Right.
And a lot of organizations are not. A lot of the approaches is not like that.
Yeah.
And I think that, of course, and then what you were talking about, the feedback loop, right? Which is what you're talking about with Meharry. It's
exactly.
Like we don't have people. When these clinical trials happen, usually the people going through a clinical trial, specifically our people, something goes left. You know what I mean? Again, they were all up on you to, take these samples and do all this stuff, but they're not necessarily coming to you and saying, hey, you know, what's going on? There's no real follow-up. And they're not involving us throughout the process. They just involve us in the process when they need what they need.
Yeah, and that's a big problem, right? Like you said, the trust, but then you're talking about this not being involved. So you come into my neighborhood, you knock on my door, hey, this will be good for you. Why should I even bother with you, right? Is that what you're saying?
Period. And let's even go one step further. You know, like you have other programs that are government related. Let's be clear. There's a lot of undocumented people in this country. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily trying to put their name in any database. Black people, I know my people. We're not trying to, you know, we just try to pay our taxes and keep it pushing, right? So putting anything else into
we want to stay off the radar,
right? You know what I mean? And with good reason. You know what I mean? Like the whole part of Idhini is understanding that the people are not wrong. You know what I mean? The people have our people, black, brown, and indigenous people. You know what I mean? Specifically the indigenous people, they have no reason to trust. None.
Right.
Zero. So, and then on top of that, what? You want to put me in a clinical trial for $2,800? I got to take 14 days off of work. I got to drive you know, all these barriers are why we created what it is. Because I'll tell you right now, this is breaking news, right? So I've had 59 people die, including my father, who I just buried on Sunday.
Oh God,
right?
Sorry to hear that, Gerard.
Since March 11th, 2020. You know what I mean? We're not getting detected. We're not getting, that's 59 people in my little iPhone that are dead, including my godmother who raised me. And you're talking about, in 2 weeks, I'm burying my 51-year-old friend. I'm not 50. Before I went to the funeral, I buried my 56-year-old friend. You see what I'm saying?
So how is Idhini getting folks to come to this understanding that we need to be heard, but in the sense that we need to be involved in these clinical trials? It's not that they don't know that we should be involved. You covered the trust issue. So now how do we overcome that? How are you overcoming that with Idhini?
It's our approach. Our approach is we work with the community. Our model is everything is with the community. So whether it's your HBCU, your place of worship, even your social, your social organizations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We partner with, in the fraternities, of course, sororities, those type of things. But whatever organization, wherever you work, whatever is your cause, whatever you're working with health, we're helping you do what you do for free, number one.
Right.
Which, you know what I mean? Which is where I'm leading to. And being able to not only enumerate, not only to be able to actually identify, and this is all done anonymously. So nobody knows, like you're not going to your church and saying, hey, I got this problem. It's like more so, I've entered the system anonymously. We know who you are. We can validate who you are, with our technology. And then you can ask your questions. You can get health informations all for you. It's like, I went to a whole bunch of PWIs before I went to HBCU. And when I went to HBCU, what blew my mind away was that everything was there for me.
Right.
So we're using the same mindset that whatever your health issue, no matter what it is, we have it for you. We'll patch you in.
So that anonymity, that's helping the situation.
Absolutely. Because health, no one's going to say, hey, think about Black men, how we're raised, particularly, older Black men. You know what I mean? Like the ones at risk, 45 to maybe 75. You know what I mean? We're not talking about prostate cancer. We're not talking about colon cancer. We're not talking about pancreatic cancer. We're not talking about liver cancer.
Right.
We just get it, and then we find out someone died of it, right? So the ability not to, and there's peer pressure. Like, think about it. Let's think of like kids who want to go get vaccinated, and their parents don't want them to get vaccinated.
Right.
So at least someone could be able to have a conversation and have a dialogue, and not necessarily have to be identified. They can be identified by their gender, by their relative age, because we don't take date of birth, we only take month and year, right?
Okay.
So we don't take.
But isn't there still some finesse there, though, finessing going on too? Because you tell them, okay, anonymous, but even that when you say that, it's that trust issue comes up again, right?
Right.
But
well, yeah, our system,
uh-huh.
well, our system, that's exactly. So we knew that if trust is the biggest problem, then we need to take that out the way. So not only HIPAA compliant, we're SOC 2 compliant. We're working towards ISO 27001, and eventually the goal is to be high trust. And we already have we're building in the HL7 that goes directly to Epic. So when we said that, we made sure that everything from our technology partners, even our regular partners, understand HIPAA, understand, how to collect and how to distribute data securely, and and maintaining the privacy of the patient.
And that's down the line, right? You say you make sure they all understand HIPAA, but what about oversight?
What do you mean?
Like, you got more than one hand in the pot, right? That you're relying on to make sure to keep this anonymity. But you got to have some oversight, right?
Right. You have like cybersecurity professionals, that's normal. Like we had to. We're dealing with data, so you have outsource a cybersecurity firm to manage that stuff. So we have the general base. We're building the system and we're building everything, so we have the utmost security.
Okay.
But that's a great question, because by the way, that's one of our differentiators, right? That we're making sure that we have all these things in place, because we want to ensure that when you go into the system, that your data is not going to be, sold, not going to be, transferred, that you have control of your data, and any interaction that is with your data, you are aware of immediately. And it's all automated. So it's not like I have like someone can go in there and change it. You know what I mean? It's like it's in the structure, in the overall structure of the software.
Now, Idhini is community focused. Tell us a little bit more about that, because you really just hone in on the community itself, which I guess that also fosters some trust as well.
Right. Because what we looked at it as, what is the big, everybody's going patient, like most organizations, it's patient to business, right? Government to patient. But the people that they trust is in the community. So why not if the community is successful, then the patients will be successful, the researchers will be successful, the drug companies everybody will be successful. And it was like the stupidest idea, like, wow, this makes sense. Like, work with them, because, and with all the grant money coming out through, all the, NIMHD, HHS, all these organizations giving out money, they're giving out money. Why don't you just give it to the community organizations and let them organize their people the way that they know how to organize their people?
Yeah, because nobody knows the community like the community.
I tell like this, one thing, I'm glad this is a black, a black person, but I'm gonna just say it like this. I don't know any community that's better at community outreach and engagement than Black folks. I don't know. I don't know. And that's globally, by the way.
Right.
That's globally. So why wouldn't you put that in their hands, school them, educate them, provide them the resources that they need so they can execute what you want, and you can partner with them. It's like, for instance, we partnered with There Goes My Hero.
Yep.
They're more focused on getting more people registered. In fact, I have it somewhere. I'm looking over there.
Yeah, There Goes My Hero. They recently launched the registry initiative to get more African American donors to help save lives. And of course, you guys, have the database of the BIPOC persons.
To be honest with you, I mean, I think that it's much more than a database.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course it's data. We have data, but it's really community. It's community-led research data collection.
Okay,
that's really what it is. It's not. Again, we believe, we also think about patient-centric approach, the community-led research approach. We're using the frameworks that are tried and true work to get people. So it's not just using a trusted technology, because technology is just going to do what you want to do. It's actually engaging partners. So like we've partnered with University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. They have the Patients Professors Program. And we are graduates of the Patients Professors Academy, which is also to facilitate that patient-led, community-led research. So we're not just doing it in a bubble, like, hey, we know everything, because that's why everybody's failed, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tech can't do it by themselves. Government can't do it by itself. The community can't do it by itself. But the reality is that the community is more like, think about it. Most people who run like patient-led groups or community-led organizations, nonprofits, they have the sickness. They have the disease. They know it in and out.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you provide them with that information and you provide them at every step of the way, you got buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a big difference to having Gerard Charlot come talk to you as a Black person, come talk to me as a Black person, than it is, Mary Smith, this, person from this organization who's, she's white, she's, she has no clue about what goes on in the community. But when Gerard comes to talk to me, now, we kind of hear, as they say.
And not just that, but Gerard's been working in the community since he was 6 years old. Since he was a Boy Scout, a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, an altar boy, a crossing guard traffic, and also now I'll be next year a member of Alpha Phi Alpha for 30 years.
Wow.
So you're not talking about someone. I've been in any community that I've lived in. You know what I mean? That's my calling card. Yeah. If anything, if that's my if you said a superpower is service, that's my superpower. And this is just another way to serve my community.
And we said at the top, 5% of Black folks participate in clinical trials compared to white folks. So the work you're doing, Gerard, the work that Idhini is doing, are you seeing when are we going to see that number increase? Because it needs to increase dramatically.
I mean, so I think it's increasing now with Idhini being in play. You know what I mean? Like, so as you know, I'm from Queens, and we have a saying that most people know, don't talk about it, be about it.
Yep.
So the reality is getting our organizations, working with our partners, working with not just institutions, like we're partners with Morgan State, with Bowie, with Coppin. We have partners all over the region. And the reality is, as we grow, whether that's revenue-based, sponsorship-based, or just investment, that's the point. But we're not going into this thing thinking that, people want us to do this, right?
Right.
We know that. Like I said, you got a better shot as a Black founder. You have a better shot winning the lotto than having a successful company. So we understand that, and we know that we're winning. We're not going to say we're going to win. We're winning, right?
Right.
So the reality is, it's keeping the momentum. It's keeping the message clear that the only way we're going to win is if we all help each other win.
Right.
It's not a me thing. In fact, we're partners with Upsearch Baltimore, which is, the Black tech community. We're part of Black Butterfly, that's run by EcoMap. We're part of Baltimore Tracks. In fact, we have a meeting today. You know what I mean? A steering committee. We work within the community. So it's not just, hey, look at me, I got a T-shirt. My office is in Baltimore, and I live in Columbia. Columbia just got called the richest, county. I mean, Howard County just became the richest county but I work in Baltimore.
Right.
Because I'm from New York. I'm from Hollis, Queens. If you don't know about that, born and raised.
I know everything about that.
Right. And I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, right? That was my youth. And we know what was going on then. So trust and believe, I can't let all my accolades, all my background, all the stuff that I've done great in the world affect that. None of it matters if I don't help my community. None of it. It really doesn't.
And coming from a place like Hollis, you know, the community, you grew up there, the community was always involved, right, with each other.
Period. I mean, block parties, you know, block parties at the park, you know, used to be, you know, park parties, used to, you know, go to basketball, you know, you had, you know, there was like, even though my family was first generation and we knew we didn't have it like that, but I never felt poor.
Right.
I never felt like I didn't have any hope. I didn't have any opportunity because I had a community that supported me. And a lot of that community looked like me.
Yeah. And so now we need the community to get involved, support clinical trials, right?
Right, but you got to support the community first. I'm a proponent, and that's what makes our approach different. Is that you have to support the community first. You can't. Yeah. It's not an either or. It's a you must do that first.
So how is that message when you talk to your partners, when you talk to your sponsors? How is that message received?
Well, there's a ton of research to prove what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them have written that research, so they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it is certainly is. But you know, sometimes when you're trying to bring on a new partner, for instance, they all don't understand that. So you have to show it to them at some point, right?
I mean, you see the numbers, you see the data. We have data in 4 counties. You know what I mean? We're growing our user base. You know what I mean? We just got a letter of intent for, you know, from a major pharmaceutical company to use our stuff. Right. Why? Because it works. It works. And our approach is not the Idhini or Gerard approach, right?
Right.
This is the way to do it. This is proven research on, you know, Dr. Daniel Mullins out of University of Maryland. He basically created what is called patient-centered research. You know what I mean? You have, you know, community and patient-led research. I mean, patient-centered research is all about community-led research. Yeah. And if you're not engaging the community, then there's no point. There's no value.
Yeah. It is National Bone Marrow Awareness Month. And again, we're talking about clinical trials. We're talking about the hard work that Idhini is doing. And many people probably haven't heard of Idhini. So just break it down. Where can they find more information? Give us your website and just break down for us why. I mean, you've done a good job already. Summarize, I should say, instead of break down why Idhini is important and why people should go and look up more information on you guys.
Your health is your wealth. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And the bottom line is the future of our families is not about you. It's about everybody else. It's about your mother. It's about your kids. It's about everybody that you love has a health issue. And the reality is that learning more about it and having awareness, and not just awareness like, okay, I heard this, but awareness of really knowing for yourself. You know, you empower yourself to be better. You empower your community because you're able to actually give to your community, which makes you belong, to really have that sense of community and know for yourself that you can, that you matter.
Yeah. And you know, and before we let you go, there's a couple other things. Obviously right now, we still have COVID around, but now it's monkeypox, right? There are some trials on that.
Right after it.
Say again?
It's going to be smallpox right after it.
And so again, doesn't that underscore this idea that we have to get in there, we have to figure out what works for us, right?
Right. It has to, but again, incentivization. So like, you know, the main things that we do provide you the access anywhere. It's completely remote. You don't got to go nowhere. Everything's decentralized, so you don't have to be there. Number 2, it's anonymous, so you can feel free to say what you want to say and how you really feel about what it is. And number 3, you get paid. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's be clear. Like, you get, whether you're participating in a survey, a focus group, or any type of interaction, you get paid, and you get paid at your level. You get paid for what you do. You hear right now in the workplace, it's quiet quitting. Well, there's no quiet quitting. You need to be compensated for your data, because guess what? If you're not, it's a problem because trust and believe with that data, they're making billions. Billions with a B. Their industry is $1 trillion. The healthcare industry is 20% of our GDP. So you're talking about $5.73 trillion. So when you're giving up that data, you better know what you're getting for it and how it's going to help.
Wow. So again, what's the website?
Idhini, IDHINI.com, company. We are in Baltimore. We are born and raised in Baltimore, me and the company. We are HBCU led, Morgan Strong. So we're definitely Baltimore. And that's it. I mean, like, come join us, share your voice, because your voice is your health. And if you can't speak up and sit at the table about your health, then what's the point?
And real quick, HBC, you mentioned Morgan. That's important too, that the fact that HBCUs are involved, because again, there's only certain entities and individuals we trust, right?
Yeah. But again, it's not, so we never made this out to be an us versus them, so to speak, thing.
Right.
But what we realize is that our communities are underserved. And we need to that is where we need to focus our efforts. I mean, we could do this for anybody. Anybody could use this. Anybody could use it. But that's not who it's for. And purpose matters. Intent matters. And that's why we make sure that people, at the end of the day, if we want others, so to speak, to understand this, then we need a platform where we can both learn from each other. And if that's not happening within the community, then it ain't gonna happen. It's just that simple.
It's just that simple. Gerard Charlot of Idhini, we really appreciate you, man. And we're going to continue here at the Black Press to encourage people to go and participate, because our lives depend on it. You said it best. We appreciate you, Gerard.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day.
Thanks for joining. Let it be known. Gerard Charlot of Idhini, we really appreciated it. I keep saying it's National Bone Marrow Awareness Month, and it's actually November. We was doing this ahead of time, so we think the issue of clinical trials is extremely important in our community. We've seen what was happened with the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen now with monkeypox and so many others. And as Gerard brought out, we know about the mistrust and the distrust, and it's well-founded. No one needs to be ashamed that they don't trust the medical community. But Gerard is out sending the message that give it a chance, do it the right way, and we can build that trust within the community so that we can protect ourselves. So thanks for watching. Let It Be Known, the Black Press of America's flagship morning news program. We will see you tomorrow.